I want to talk about Sting. Sting is retiring just as TNA is coming back. That doesn't feel right. But it was 1985 when Sting hit the wrestling scene. He was a part of the Freedom Fighters with Jim Hellwig. Almost 40 years later, we now know when he plans to hang up the tights for good. He appeared on Dynamite Wednesday night to address the fans. I think we all knew what was coming. I mean, what else would he be coming out by himself to address the fans about? He wasn't coming out to let us know he saved 15% on his car insurance. It was pretty clear what he was coming out to talk about. He came out and he reflected on his career, traveling up and down the road with guys like Lex Luger and the Steiner brothers and Buff Bagwell. And he said they used to look at the generation that came before them, and they used to wonder what makes these guys keep coming back year after year. Why can't they just let it go? Guys like Dusty Rhodes got a nice reaction. Guys like Hulk Hogan, who got roundly booed by the crowd in Texas. He deserved to be booed just for the way he screwed up that Starrcade finish in '97. He mentioned Ric Flair, and he remembered the Clash of the Champions match in 1988 that put him on the map. That was the first clash they ever did for the NWA World title. They went to a 45-minute draw that night. Ric Flair made Sting a star in one night and set him on his path as a top name in the business across multiple promotions for the next 3 decades plus. It cannot be overstated how much of a role Ric Flair played in Sting's ascent. Even into Sting's first championship win, where Sting was supposed to wrestle Flair and beat him, but he tore his knee out. The company wanted Flair then to drop the belt to Lex Luger instead, and Flair said, no, I'm not going to do that. We made a promise. I promised Sting that I would do the honors for him, that he would take the title from me. And he refused to drop the belt to Luger. He said, I'm a man of my word, I'm not going to do it, and he didn't. And when Sting came back, Flair did finally drop the belt to him in Baltimore at the Great American Bash in 1990. And there are a lot of parallels between Sting and the Ultimate Warrior, as former tag team partners who came up in the business together, the Freedom Fighters, the Blade Runners. Sting beat Flair to win the world title, his first world title. He was going to be the guy. The only thing is, business actually got worse with Sting as champion. He wasn't the draw that they thought he would be or that they hoped he would be. So they put the belt back on Flair 6 months later. With Warrior, Vince McMahon thought that he was going to be the one to replace Hulk Hogan as the next big thing in his company. But Warrior got the belt. He didn't draw well. So the following year, they put the belt back on Hogan. This all happened around the same period of time. Warrior got the belt in April of 1990. Sting got the belt in July of 90. Warrior dropped the belt in January of 91. Sting dropped the belt in January of 91. They both became big single stars, but neither one of them would ever go on to become that truly big draw that these promoters thought and hoped that they would be. So there's a lot of parallels there between them. So here he is, all these years later, and he told the fans on Wednesday that he gets it now. He understands why those old guys kept coming back. He said because they loved being on the road with the boys and they loved the roar of the crowd. He left out the part about loving the spotlight and the power and the paychecks that went with it. I think that had a lot to do with it too. I mean, that's awfully hard to walk away from, but he didn't say that. He said his retirement in 2015 did not sit right with him. And there was a key moment in his Hall of Fame speech where he said, the only thing for sure about Sting is nothing's for sure. The same famous words he uttered on Nitro in the early days of the Crow gimmick, and the last words that he actually spoke for almost a year. This week we found out one thing that is for sure about Sting, and that is that next year, at Revolution, he will wrestle his final match. He said, I debuted for AEW at Revolution 2021, and Revolution 2024 is going to be his retirement. Revolution usually takes place the first weekend in March, but they have not yet announced the date for it. Sting was always the one that got away from Vince McMahon. He was the one big star that never strayed from WCW. and left to go to the WWF. When WCW closed down, he was one of the big stars who chose to stay at home and collect his guaranteed money that he had left on his Turner deal, because the offer WWE made to him was lower than what he could make just by sitting at home and doing nothing. Only Booker T and Diamond Dallas Page gave up the extra money to come to WWE for less money, but to go early to WWE. Now for Booker, it worked out well. For DDP, he probably regrets that decision. And there had been a couple of times over the years where it sounded like Sting might finally come in. Around the time of WrestleMania 19, there were rumors to that effect. And the timeline makes sense because Goldberg debuted the night after that. And he was another one of those names who sat at home for 2 years collecting their money. So if the contract that he had and the contract that Sting had were up around the same time, then it would make sense that Sting was negotiating with Vince McMahon in early 2003. He has said that there was a plan for him to confront Stone Cold Steve Austin at the end of WrestleMania. Austin and Rock, originally they were going to headline WrestleMania that year, I guess to complete their trifecta of WrestleMania main events. But Austin ended up in the hospital the night before with a panic attack, and they really weren't sure what condition he would be in for the match. So they got bumped down the card. Jim Ross has said that Austin and Rock were not happy about that. Imagine that moment, though, the end of WrestleMania, and Sting comes down to the ring. I mean, he wouldn't be coming down from the rafters, obviously, but he comes down to the ring to confront Stone Cold. As it turned out, that was Austin's last match, so it was a good thing Sting didn't sign with them. Can you imagine Sting signs the contract, the ink is barely dried, because he thought, man, I'm getting a program here with Stone Cold Steve Austin, only for them to turn around and say, well, whoops, Austin's actually retiring. He can't go anymore. But hey, we've got a great idea for a backup feud with you and Triple H. I'm sure he'd love to put you over. So it just never worked out. And Sting ended up working with TNA for many, many years. There was another time in 2011 where he was in between deals, and it looked like maybe we'll finally see him in WWE. We might get that Sting and Undertaker match, which is a match the fans built up in their minds as this dream match. Tony Khan spits out dream matches like they're going out of style. He throws that word around a little too much for matches that are only dreams to him. But that would be a true dream match for a lot of wrestling fans, right? Sting against The Undertaker. Clearly, The Undertaker was never interested in the match. He never really seemed like he fought for it. But they were building to his return at WrestleMania against Triple H. And they started airing those Cabin in the Woods vignettes. And the fans in their mind made up this idea that the videos were building to a Sting debut. Except they weren't. But WWE saw this. They made a phone call to Sting to see if he might be available, to see if he might be interested in coming in. And again, in the end, he opted against it. And he got more money from Dixie Carter to stay with TNA. Dixie Carter just kept offering him these one-year extensions every time his deal would come due. And he kept staying for one more year and one more year and one more year until finally in 2014, he made the jump. Sting had some great matches in TNA against Kurt Angle and AJ Styles and Abyss. We got Joker Sting. I know some people hate Joker Sting. I liked it. But I will always look back on that period as time wasted. For all of the matches that we could have gotten with him in WWE, in these WrestleMania matches we could have gotten, him against Undertaker, him against Shawn Michaels, him against John Cena, everybody he could have worked with. It was a missed opportunity. And when he finally came to WWE, they put him in the ring with Triple H at WrestleMania. That's not the match that most fans wanted to see him in, but that was the one they gave us. And the announcers, they clearly had their orders from Vince McMahon to talk about it like us against them. Like they were still at war 15 years later, when the story should have been Sting coming in to battle the Authority. Instead, they decided it's going to be WWE against WCW. The problem with that is WCW had been dead for 15 years. Almost 15 years at that point. Nobody cared about that story. Only Vince McMahon cared about that story. Arn Anderson, he was working backstage for WWE at the time. He said Vince told the announcers to basically, in so many words, bury Sting on commentary. Welcome to the big time, Sting, and whatever other condescending language they used. I remember JBL at the end of the match, he was screaming, "Oh, we won! We won! We won the war!" He sounded like one of these internet morons the other week with the NXT against AEW stuff. We won! We won! We won the war! Pure wrestle cringe. They sent the NWO out there to help Sting when the entire story that lifted WCW over WWE for those 83 weeks was built around the NWO trying to destroy the company and Sting being the savior of WCW. And here they are now coming to the man's rescue. They didn't care. I'm glad he finally got his WrestleMania match, his one and only, but he lost. Even Scott Hall, Triple H's boy, he couldn't believe. When they were in the rehearsals and he found out that Triple H was winning, he couldn't believe it. You would think he would stick up for his buddy. But he was just like, wait, what? Come again? We found out later on they wanted Triple H to go over because the plan was to do Rock and Triple H at WrestleMania the following year. That's why they did that segment later in the show with Triple H and Stephanie and The Rock and Ronda Rousey. So they didn't want him losing and then coming out later in the show to do that. Whether they were doing Rock against Triple H the following year or not, Sting was losing that match. And it was the wrong decision. Especially because the next time we saw Sting, after this loss, months later, he came out on Raw and challenged Seth Rollins to a match for the WWE Championship. Now, I don't blame WWE for the neck injury and the Rollins match. I mean, there's plenty of blame to go around for him agreeing to take those 2 buckle bombs. But there's no way to describe his run there as anything other than a disappointment. You know, he was diagnosed with spinal stenosis, he had a fracture in his neck, and he was forced into retirement. WWE would not medically clear him. They put him into their Hall of Fame. That is not how Sting wanted his career to end. Wrestlers do not want to be told that their career is over. They want to be able to make that choice and say when they're done. And we've had numerous stories in recent years, Daniel Bryan, Edge, Saraya, who all were told the same thing. You're not cleared. You can't come back. And in the end, they were able to come back. So no wrestler wants to be told that they're done. They want to decide that on their own. Fast forward to 2020, his WWE deal expires. Tony Khan brings him to AEW. And it's a shame that he had to debut in front of almost no fans because of the pandemic, but I like the idea that they went for when he came out that first time. If you remember who was in the ring, he came out and he went up to each person in the ring, each of the babyface individuals who were in the ring, from the oldest to the youngest. So the first person he walked up to was Arn Anderson. And then he went over to where Dustin Rhodes was laying on the mat. And then he went over to the corner and he knelt down beside Cody Rhodes. And then he went up right in Darby Allin's face. And Darby was the only one of the 4 who didn't look intimidated. He stood up to Sting. 4 generations of talent in that segment. And first, Sting was only going to do cinematic matches. That was the agreement that he had with Tony Khan. Tony said, look, what if we just do cinematic? And they did. And then 2 months later, Sting did a live match in front of actual fans. That was his first of many stage dives that he would do here during his AEW run. I can only imagine, by the way, what he's going to do in his final match. I don't even want to know. But he's had 20 matches in AEW, all tags involving Darby Allin, no singles matches. And he has won every single one of those matches. He is undefeated in AEW. And he has always been treated with great reverence by Tony Khan. Tony Khan is even going to have a gift of some sort for Sting on Dynamite this Wednesday. It might be Tony jumping out of a gift box with a new contract begging him to stay. He loves Sting so much. But for all the things that you can say about Tony Khan and the way he books his shows, his booking of Sting and the way he has treated him has been perfect. The pairing with Darby is one of the best booking decisions that he's ever made because Darby was one of those hand-picked young originals from day one, right? One of the pillars that they love to call them the pillars. And the association with Sting and their partnership, their friendship, has only made Darby that much of a bigger star. Yes, he's never done a single job for anyone his entire time in AEW, but I think Tony realized, Sting is over 60 years old. He's going to be 65 when he retires in March. When he came in, he was already over 60 years old. The people still pop for him. They love to see him, but he is older. It was more important, I think, for Tony Khan to protect whatever aura he had left than to bring him in just to use him to do jobs for people until it just doesn't mean anything. If Sting goes through this entire AEW run undefeated and then loses in his final match, that would be far more meaningful. And I actually don't think he is losing. I don't think he's losing at all. But let's say he did, it would be more meaningful anyway. If he won all of these matches that he was a part of, but then ultimately he actually went out on his back looking up at the lights, that would be more meaningful. But that's not why Tony Khan brought Sting to AEW. He did not bring him in like he is still a full-time performer or even a part-time performer to do jobs for people. Like he's getting them ready for the world champion or something like that. That was Tony Khan's way of giving him a proper send-off and giving the fans who come to the shows that he does wrestle on the chance to see Sting live. When I went to Grand Slam last year, I remember thinking, this is probably the last time that I am ever going to see Sting live in the ring. And I got to see him in there posing at the end with the Great Muta that night, which was wild. It was a cool moment. And I learned to appreciate those moments because, let's be honest, there isn't anyone else like Sting left from that era. There really isn't. I mean, I guess maybe you could say like a Jeff Jarrett or something, but Hogan's done, Flair is done, Undertaker's done, HBK is done. So many others aren't even alive anymore. It's like he's the last of a dying breed. And the fact that he's still able to go out there, even in a t-shirt, and he's a little slower, but that he can go out there and not completely embarrass himself and still perform at the level that he can perform at and do the things he can do, my attitude has been just appreciate it for what it is, because it's not going to last forever. And now we have an end date. Only a few weeks shy of his 65th birthday. He gets to go out on his own terms this time. Now, Darby Allin has said he does not want to wrestle Sting in his final match. He has said that in interviews before. It probably is not going to be a singles match. I don't think he can do one at this point without a ton of smoke and mirrors. So the question is, who is Sting's final opponent? Actually, the better question is, who are Sting's final opponents? Plural. Because I think it'll be a tag team match. If Adam Copeland and Christian Cage were to reunite by Revolution, and that just seems way too soon, but if that were to happen, Sting and Darby against Edge and Christian would be a hell of a way for him to go out. Or I could see a trios match with Sting, Darby, and Copeland against Christian, Luchasaurus, and Nick Wayne, right? With the little pipsqueak tapping out like a madman to the Scorpion Deathlock. Whoever it ends up being, don't be like our sad tweet winner of the week, who tweeted this to me on Wednesday. I posted something about Sting, and this was the response that I got. Good fucking riddance if this is it for him. Continue your shilling of all of Tony Khan's decisions. I used to respect you, but those days are gone. That's a wrap, folks. This is the final sound off. You're listening to it right now, 2007 to 2023. I've lost the respect of Miguel Andres Martinez Santos. I just don't know how I'll ever be able to recover from this. I love, by the way, how I got that tweet only a few days after I did that entire segment on Tony Khan on last week's show, which wasn't exactly flattering for him. Now is when Miguel chooses to tweet that to me. You can't make this stuff up. But enough with the riffraff. With Sting winding down his career, I thought this would be an appropriate time to go through what I think are the best matches of his career and make some recommendations on matches that you should check out. These are the 10 best matches of Sting's career that you should go seek out and watch. This is my list, and I have ranked them in order from least to best. You guys are getting spoiled. I got your top 20, your top 15 list last week of SmackDown moments. Now I'm giving you a Sting countdown. Don't think you're getting this every week, because these are hard to do. But I just thought this would be an appropriate time to do it. Now, I've ranked these, like I said, in order from least to best. His TNA match with Kurt Angle from Bound for Glory 2007 where he won the world title. It does not make my top 10, but it does get an honorable mention, especially for the baseball bat shot to the face that Sting took. He took a baseball bat to the face and completely no-sold it like a boss. Kurt swung the bat at his head. Sting was supposed to catch the bat, but it went right through his hands, and it busted him open. I'll never forget the sound that it made when it hit him in the face. I have no idea how he didn't go down. I have no idea how he didn't get knocked out. But Kurt had a look on his face like he just shit his pants. He couldn't believe it. So I did want to mention that. But let's start with number 10. Sting against the Great Muta at the Great American Bash 1989. They went less than 10 minutes. But for a sub 10 minute match, you will not find much better than this. This was really good. Number 9, Sting against Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight title at Great American Bash 1990. This was after Sting returned from his knee injury. He finally won the world title. Big pop for the finish when Flair went for the figure 4. Sting pulled him in for the small package and got the pin. Number 8, Sting against Diamond Dallas Page on Monday Nitro, April 26th, 1999 for the WCW World title. I didn't like much about WCW after 1998, but this match right here, and their Nitro match the previous year, which had the same finish. But this was the better of the two matches. They went like 20 minutes, and this was the better of the two matches. DDP goes for a diamond cutter out of the corner. Sting's holding onto the ropes. Page is trying to pull him out for a diamond cutter. He tries once, he tries twice, and as he goes for a third attempt, Sting counters into a Scorpion Death Drop, and he drops him. And he wins the championship. This was only 15 days, 2 weeks, after Page won that title for the very first time. And he loses the championship to Sting. And it wasn't even the main event. They ruined it later in the show by having DDP win the belt right back in a 4-way match. And DDP told me when I had him on the podcast, that was a Dusty Rhodes call. That was a Dusty Rhodes idea to do it that way. But this right here is the best Sting match from the Crow era. If you were wondering, since he put the Crow face paint on, what's the best Sting match? This is it right here. So I'm talking late era WCW, his entire TNA run, anything he's ever done in AEW. From that Crow era, this is the best match of his career. Number 7, Sting against Vader, Big Van Vader, for the WCW World Heavyweight title at the 1992 Great American Bash. Vader beats Sting to win the world title. This was the first in their classic trio of matches. I loved all of the Sting and Vader matches. For my money, Sting and Vader, best WCW feud of that early 90s period. They worked so well together. Sting against Vader really was the best thing about early 90s WCW. Number 6, Sting against Cactus Jack from Beach Blast 1992, the match that Mick Foley thought was the best match of his career until Mind Games came along against Shawn Michaels, and then that became the best match of his career. And I can't disagree. This was an excellent match. It was non-title, but it was an excellent match. Number 5, Sting against Ric Flair for the first Clash of the Champions in 1988, their 45-minute draw for the NWA World title. This is the match that put Sting on the map and made him a star. I don't think it is his best match, but it is top 5, and it's historically significant for obvious reasons. Number 4, Sting against Big Van Vader in the finals of the King of Cable tournament at Starrcade 1992. What a surprise! Another Sting and Vader match. Number 3, Sting and Lex Luger against the Steiner Brothers at Super Brawl 1991. A fantastic tag team match. Nikita Koloff runs down to the ring with a chain around his arm. He goes to bash Luger with it. Sting shoves him out of the way, though, and takes the bullet himself. Number 2, the best of all the Sting and Vader matches. Their White Castle of Fear strap match at Super Brawl 1993. Forgetting the embarrassing White Castle mini-movies and just focusing on the match itself, I love this. It's one of the best strap matches you'll ever see. And the number 1 best match of Sting's career is the best War Games match of all time from Wrestle War 1992 with Sting's squadron. He led his own squad with Ricky Steamboat, Dustin Rhodes, Barry Windham, and Nikita Koloff against the Dangerous Alliance with Steve Austin, Rick Rude, Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, and Larry Zbyszko. 3 of Sting's best ever matches came from this year, 1992. 92-93 Sting was prime Sting in the ring. Sting in the ring, that could have been a pay-per-view. Ric Flair was gone. The 4 Horsemen were no more. Enter Paul E. in the Dangerous Alliance. And for the finish here, Rude removed the turnbuckle from the ring post. Zbyszko tried to hit Sting with the metal piece, but he hit Eaton instead, his partner, which led to a win for Sting's team. That began the downfall, the descent of the Dangerous Alliance. War Games was a whole different beast back then than it is today, which is not to say that there aren't any quality War Games matches today or that they can't be, but you will not find one of better quality than this one. And 91 comes close. The one from Wrestle War 91 is pretty close. It's right behind this one, but I think 92 edges it out, and this right here is Sting's best match. And all of these can be found on Peacock. Or if you're international, I guess it's still the WWE Network in some places. So if you've never seen them before, and frankly, even if you have, go back and check them out. They're well worth your time.